This video is for level 10-16 training. In this training, we will be talking about the end of the Cold War. Let's start with the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall is one of the most famous parts of the Cold War. The city of Berlin was still divided between East and West Germany even after the Soviets initiated the Berlin blockade in 1951. Throughout the beginnings of the Cold War, people could move relatively freely between East and West Berlin. As people in East Berlin started to suffer in poverty under the Soviets' rule, they started defecting to West Berlin. Most of the people who were defecting were among the young and educated. In response to the massive amount of people trying to leave East Berlin, the USSR built the Berlin Wall. The goal of the Berlin Wall was to keep the people from East Berlin from defecting to the West Berlin and then on to West Germany. Détente is a policy of easing tensions. Throughout the Cold War, there are hot points and then there are cold points. We also have many different presidents. President Nixon adopted the policy of détente to try and build better relations with the Soviet Union. He did this by ending the Vietnam War, signing SALT I, a treaty that limited the amount of ballistic missile launchers. He also reduced the armed forces sizes, and he also aided the Soviets in their hunger problem by selling them grain. President Carter wanted to keep the same policy of détente, but wasn't able to because the Soviets invaded Afghanistan to prevent them from revolting against communism. The US wanted to have an economic alliance in the Middle East for their resources like oil, so they could not support the USSR. Carter ended détente by halting the grain sales. He boycotted the 1980 Olympics and postponed the ratification of SALT II, which reduced nuclear weapons. Let's talk about President Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan deserves a lot of credit for helping end the Cold War. Reagan announced his Reagan Doctrine, which declared that the U.S. would not just contain communism, but they would now aid rebels in fighting against it. So in the past, we were just trying to contain communism. We didn't want other countries to fall. But now we're going to help countries actively fight against it in their own land. He provided Afghanistan with money to fight the Soviets back. He also believed in peace through strength, meaning that the U.S. wanted to make sure their enemies know that they have the means and the will to stop aggression. Kind of a flex of our muscles. Reagan's Star Wars program was a big hit to the USSR. Star Wars was a massive amount of spending into our anti-ballistics defense systems. We now had more advanced technology that could prevent an attack from the USSR. They couldn't keep up with our technology, so they backed down on the arms race. Reagan also started undermining their economy by taking their clean energy business from them in West Europe by charging cheaper prices. This damaged their economy even further. Another blow to the USSR was the fall of the Berlin Wall. Reagan made a speech calling out the Soviets' leader to tear down the wall. When it fell, it was kind of a symbolic end to the Cold War and was an end to the Soviet stronghold in East Germany. Gorbachev is the leader of the Soviet Union at the end of the Cold War. He sees that the USSR is failing, so he tries to implement some new relaxed policies. His two big policies are Glasnost and Perestroika. Glasnost moved away from the strict totalitarian secret police brutal communism control. He started giving people more freedoms. Perestroika attempted to move more towards a hybrid communism/capitalism system. People in the Soviet Union could own business and property for the first time since the creation of the Soviet Union. Gorbachev's relaxed policies didn't work though. Many of the original republics that made up the Soviet Union wanted their independence as they saw the USSR was failing. The relaxed policies and the weakening economy led to many republics declaring independence and joined the Commonwealth of Independent States. There are many reasons why the Soviet Union didn't work. For starters, communism just isn't sustainable. The four big reasons you should remember for why the Soviet Union failed and the Cold War ended are the Soviet Union's failing economy, the nuclear arms race and space race were way too expensive, many of the original republics that made up the Soviet Union wanted their independence, And finally, communism bred a huge inequality gap between its government and the people that couldn't be sustained as old communist leaders began to die off and new democratic ideas began to emerge. When the Soviet Union collapsed, the Cold War ended, leaving the US as victors. Remember, the Cold War had a lot of events that take place during it. This war was a war of democracy and capitalism versus harsh oppression and communism. Again, December 25th, 1991, the Soviet Union no longer exists. They break up, like you can see in this map, and the Cold War is over. In history, we say that the United States won the Cold War, but the US, our president at the time, never really came out and said that we won. We wanted to try to keep a good relationship with the new Russia.